So last time we made sure that Rabbit plugin is installed correctly. Everybody's working. We also populated the CA with an initial C condition with points. You need to do that twice, right? You need to have sort of two different configurations. You're going to produce two different drawings, two different axons, right? And so just having two situations, two sort of pieces of city to go off of. So just quickly, just to refresh, in case you haven't. This is an example file I made. I have the file in Grasshopper, the graph that I gave you guys up. I also have the site model that I gave you guys in Rhino, that 3DM native Rhino file. I can turn on one of the point configurations I have saved in my layers. And then in Grasshopper, I come all the way to the left, look for that orange point widget, right click, set multiple points. I can select all of these points. I have more points than I ever cared to have at this point, right? So what it does is it, again, just as a quick reminder, it takes each of those points, it looks and looks at each of the cells of the grid and says, is there a point inside? If so, yes. If yes, then the cell is alive. If no, then the cell is dead, right? Then it says, okay, let's play Conway's Game of Life. And for each generation, it's just going to remember and populate the model in Z with points, okay? So we start to play this out. If I go to the middle and look for this green glowing circle, right? Here's where I can tell how many generations to spell out. So there's the first generation, the initial seed condition, the next, the next, the next, the next, the next. And you can watch your city grow. You can see how tall it gets. Maybe you prefer low rise, maybe you prefer mid rise, maybe you prefer high rise, super dense, right? This is just giving us points though, right? So each of these points are registering on that grid down below, so it's saying it's live or dead, right? As these things spring to life, continue to thrive or die, right? We start to populate the Z direction, right? Each of these points are going to be the target points to make a copy of our unit, right? So we need to make an actual piece of hypothetical architecture part that can then be instantiated across the entire system to create sort of aggregation, right? Okay, and so that's the goal for today, right? So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to, in Grasshopper, I'm just going to turn this back down to 0, right? I'm not going to let it try to continue to calculate out 45 generations of stuff. I'll just turn it back to 0, dial it down. In fact, for the moment, I might just sort of turn off Grasshopper because we're going to be working in Rhino for just a few minutes. I made a new layer in my Rhino file called New Components, right? Just sort of thinking about, all right, now I'm going to make this part, this piece, that's going to be aggregated and accumulated across the model. Right, so I checked it, so it's the active layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box, some sort of cube as an ingredient, starting ingredient, right here at the 0, 0, 0 point, okay? If you look at Grasshopper, and you look at the grid that's created, I mean, I believe that the spacing is 10 by 10, right? The size of the grid cells. All right, so I'm going to make a 10 by 10 by 10 cube, right? Just sort of thinking about how I make a module that works with the grid rather than against it. So in Rhino, I'm just going to come over here, go to the cube tool, box, whatever, corner to corner, height. First corner of base, it wants a point, right? I can click on something, but I can just type in 0, 0, 0 and get that 0, 0, 0 point, right, where x, y, and z axes all converge at 0. Other corner of base or height, now I can say 10, 10, 0, right? I'm just going to quickly. And now it's asking for the height, and I'm just going to say 10, right? So now I have a 10 by 10 cube on that 0, 0, 0 point in the positive x, positive y Cartesian coordinate plane. Right? Just went to the box command, really simple. Remember, it calls these solids, but really all they are closed polysurfaces, right? So it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 surfaces that happen to coincide with edges and join, right? I can explode it and get all six faces again as surfaces, individual surfaces. But I don't want to do that, right? What I would argue is that use this as your initial ingredient, right? I would say a maximum 3 of these, right? And then perform a maximum of 2 Boolean operations in order to create something a little less simple than this, right? Now remember, we're going to be repeating this hundreds, if not thousands of times, right? So you don't have to make this thing super complicated. Okay. Let's see here. So as an example, let's say I make 2 copies of this. Now I'll have 3 of these. And I'll move this, I'll turn on my ortho, and I'll move this 5 units in this direction. I'll just move it over this direction as well. 5 units in this direction. And then in Z, maybe I'll move it 5 units as well, right? Just sort of, instead of eyeballing it, I'm going to try to be precise here. Really interesting, that'd be kind of a really interesting apartment unit, actually, right? Like, so if you thought about these things colliding, have you guys studied Unité by Le Corbusier? Sort of really interesting apartment section, right? Sort of double story. Yeah. Am I speaking Greek, or have you guys looked at Le Corbusier? All right, so anyway, no? How many of you have heard of Le Corbusier? Most of you, some of you haven't? Look up Le Corbusier. But anyway, this idea that we could actually have a 2 or 3, even 3-story or split level somehow apartment, and that some, a bedroom up top could open up onto a private balcony that's the ceiling or roof of the slightly less private living space down below with a kitchen and a nice view out to the rest of Manhattan or the Strip or whatever, downtown LA or whatever it is, right? So I think that's actually, that might be interesting enough. But I would say that, let's see, let me go to the Boolean commands. You can see them here, right? There's union, difference, intersection, and split. So I'll just merge these 2 together. I'll union them, right? So as you can see right now, if I zoom in here, really get in there, and get inside maybe. Maybe. So this is what annoys me about Rhino. Lens length, let's make this wider angle so I can actually see inside something here. So if I get inside, I'm actually inside that first cube, right? You can see that these things are just intersecting each other, right? What union does is simply this. Let's see, union, select surfaces, polysurfaces, right? So it sort of trims everything out. Now we're looking at the inside. So some of these things are actually, looks transparent. I could change that in the settings. But you can see that if I go inside, it actually split everything out. And so it could join it back up into just one closed polysurface. Right? All that stuff on the inside just goes away. Right? Just sort of a nice, quick, easy solution to that. So then if I put a clipping plane through this, cut a section through it, I could start to put in guts and start to see where there's an overhang and a mezzanine over top of a nice 2-story space or whatever. And figure out where to tuck the systems in back beyond. Right? You never put the systems like the bathroom against the best real estate, the big window looking out, right? You always tuck those to the inside, which is great because then they have less distance to go to the core, right? Everything runs up and down and then out, right? So, and when it comes to sewage, that's really important that it can go down. All right. So, at this point, if you wanted to, you could add one more block, right? And yeah, maybe I'll do that, why not? It'll get really complicated, but let me just draw another one really quickly. All right, there's another 10 by 10 block. Maybe I'll make these look like they're cascading. Let's see here. So I will move this up 10 units in Z, and then maybe over 5 units in this direction. maybe 5 more units in this direction, who knows. There we go. Oh my gosh, look, so now it's sort of a nice weird helix of stuff. So again, I can union these as well. Let's see, union that solid with that solid. There we go. All right. Don't get any more complicated than that. Start with you. Subtract or union these things together. The other day I took one, I just subtracted it from the other and made a nice sort of weird shape, L shape, right? It starts to imply that there's a lot of surface area along the outside of this thing for ledges and balconies and gardens and parks. Right? So, it doesn't take much to sort of look at these as an aggregate, as a whole, once you start to put these in. And the human brain just can't help but fill in the details. Like, oh, yeah, we're going to plant lots of plants here, right? Or there's going to be lots of terraces and balconies. Or, a lot of these surfaces are going to be glass, and then the horizontal surfaces are concrete, or whatever it is, right? But ultimately, I'm using that Boolean tool. I start with solid things. When I Boolean them together, somehow, I end up with just one closed polysurface again. It's really important. One polysurface. If I have lots of little surfaces and they're all exploded, right? Then when I try to move them, they'll try to move each surface to a different point, right? Rather than saying, this is a unit, I'm going to move it to this point, and this point, and this point. I'm going to say, this is a face of that unit, I'll move it over here, and this one over here, right? And this bottom face over here, and this top face over there, right? So it's really important. That's why I'm sort of keeping the constraints really loose. All right, so this isn't anything super special here, but I'll try it, right? Once I have my component, let's pop it in here. And I'm going to keep my generations down to 0 real quick so I have fewer things to start off with. Right click. All right, so I'm in the middle of the thing here. Right, I have a group here, I have a group here, I have a group over here with a yellow or an orange widget. Right, asking for a B-rep or a polysurface, right? And the note here says, use this to reference your unit, right? So this apartment unit, I'm going to say, or condo unit, I'm going to say set one B-rep, and it'll disappear. Let me select this closed polysurface, right? Now immediately it's going to take a minute, because it's going to populate each of those points just that initial state with these, right? That's why I kept the generation down to 0, just so I just have, it's not trying to calculate a whole set of stuff at the moment, right? But you can see now that it's, and what's really interesting is that in this grasshopper graph, all the weird sort of arithmetic at the end was just simply to be able to randomize turning it 90 degree increments, so that this thing would start to so they all are going the exact same direction as it begins to achieve. So this thing is obviously now larger than that 10 by 10 by 10, right? So as I start to grow this thing, they'll start to self-intersect each layer. I personally kind of find that more interesting, right? What I don't want is like weird gaps between things, and it looks like things are hovering, right? So or floating somehow, right? So I'm going to embrace the overlap just as I did with the unit design or massing. I'm going to do the same thing with the overall massing, right? So at this point, it's just a matter of how far I want to grow this thing, right? So I'll double click and I'll just say 10. Let's see what it looks like with 10 floors. Again, it might take a minute because not only is it populating all those points, but each of those points will be populated with the polysurface. Polysurface has a number of faces and vertices to remember, right? So you start to take a little more memory, right? Although did I hit enter? Did it actually? Let's see here. Where's my cursor? Where is it? Uh-oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so Windows is thinking. Let's see here. Slowly. All right, Rhino's thinking now. All right, there, right? I don't know what the sound effect for that would be, but in my head it sounded kind of like that. Wow, that's like super dense. I like it. All right. Well, you know, it's that simple. Start with a simple component because you're going to make however many of these things there are. I mean, just with 10 sort of 10 generations. Let's see how many things it's spitting out at me now. Spitting out 4,711 of them. Right? And so if you then take into consideration 6 times 6 times 6, 6 plus 6 plus 6, I guess, 18. 18 times 4,000, whatever. Right? That's how many surfaces it has, plus all the points, plus all the points. Okay. So at this point I might say, well, you know, I kind of want it to be taller, actually. So first of all, I'm going to save my Rhino file, right? Save, yes, replace it, sure. Why not? I'm going to save my Grasshopper file where it's at before I up the number again. Let's see here. Save. And then let's go with 20 generations. Ooh, it's going to get a lot bigger. All right. This is where my computer spazzes out. You can hear the fan. It's like in hyperdrive now. Here in a minute it'll settle down. Come back to snap back to reality. In the meantime, let's see here. There's my cursor. Okay, just making sure the laptop as a whole is responsive here. While I'm waiting for this, you guys are working back at your desks. Really quickly, I'll just mention, like, as far as I'm concerned, this coming Wednesday is our last course meeting. I mean, unless you guys want to meet during the week. So, on Wednesday, we'll talk about formatting these, and you can turn them in as PNGs. I hope by then, or maybe not, maybe. That's what I want. I want more news. Does anybody know how to turn this microwave off? Okay, there we go. So, let's see. What was I saying? Oh, right. By then, hopefully, I have the grid shells graded. If not, I'll close finish up by Thursday. At least photographed and graded. I might not have them all photoshopped yet. But then if it's after our final meeting, I'll just send you guys an email and maybe notification for you. They're on the tables. Pick them up before finals week is over or something like that. Those are good looking, by the way. I look forward to looking at them in detail and photographing them. Oh, look! My laptop is back up and running. Yay! All right. So you can see that it's pretty laggy. It's feeling pretty heavy here. Rhino doesn't like tens of thousands of poly surfaces for whatever reason. At least not out of the box. There's ways to minimize those things if you're going to work with lots and lots and lots of pieces. But you can see that even just, it wasn't a very complex unit, right? But once I make a bunch of them, it really sort of bogs things down. So that's why I'm saying keep it simple. The repetition is the complexity. Repetition and difference. It's actually being instantiated in different places, not on a regular grid, but an irregular grid, as well as being randomly turned in any given place as it's populated. So once I look at this and go, my goodness, that's exactly what I was looking for, I'll just make a new layer and I'll say baked city 01, right? I might do this, might make 2 in the same file, but if this one's really heavy, I might just re-download that sitemap file again from Canvas and open that up and make a second file. That way I don't have two. That way I don't have one file that's twice as heavy as it needs to be. I have two files to work with, right? And then maybe I would make a new unit really quickly make the new configuration of points instantiate them again. So, how's it working? Anybody having major difficulties or hiccups? Sometimes if you have lots of these, it takes a while. Let me just show you where I'm going. I'm going all the way to the end, right? So we go from left to right. So we're going all the way to the right. This thing that's grayed out at the very, very, very end, all the way to the far right, sort of end of the road, right? The last stop on the subway. You guys ever been to New York City? You wonder, has anybody actually gone to the last stop at the red line? The one that's like Rockaway Beach or something, off in the middle of Long Island somewhere. But anyway, random reduce, right? If I turn that on, it'll randomly go through and start to reduce and take some of those away. So you can always play around with that. But what I'm doing is, this is your geometry right here, right? So I can make that widget into my Rhino file as soon as I like this configuration, right? When I click on that, you can actually see all those polysurfaces go green. You can see again, as things grow off the map in one direction, they start to reappear on the other side. So we have a little bit of a floating sci-fi anomaly there that we'll need to delete away once we bake these things in, right? Let me just show you what this looks like. So what I do is I have a widget here that measures the length of how many items there are here, 9,084. And then I write an expression where I divide that by 2, right? And then I feed that into the random reduce, and I tell it to reduce it in half, right? So number of items to remove, about half of them, right? So I measure how many items are in there, I divide it by 2, and I feed that in for how many to remove. Let's see what that looks like. Sometimes that can help sort of, without changing too much, it can actually help out quite a bit. So I'm gonna enable that. And now I'm gonna go ahead and turn the preview off for this one, and just look at the preview of this reduced version here. And I'm not sure why this is geometry to reduce, list to reduce, random seed generator. It's just not showing them to me. Oh, it's because the preview is turned off. Pfft. All right. Duh. All right. So yeah. So that randomly reduced, and again, pure random, right? Or pseudo-random anyway, right? So the idea of randomness is that it's not necessarily equally distributed. It's that every time it sort of looks through that list, every item in that list that hasn't been touched yet has an equal chance from any other item in the list to be picked to be random. So, if it's too heavy, then suddenly this becomes lighter, and I think it is because by a factor of 2, then maybe I pick this. So what I did is I enabled it, and then I turned the preview of it on. Right? And then I can turn the preview of this off. It's still got to calculate this stuff, but then we remove about half of them. Right? So it's only got to sort of display half of them at any given time. If you like this idea, but you don't like which ones it's reducing, you can always change the seed. So if I change the seed, the random seed from 1 to something else, then I'll get a different result, get a different output, right? Give it a second, there we go. Right? So it might be very subtle, but it actually changed, right? Which ones it was picking up. All right, and so now with this, I'm going to say, I'm going to put this in Baked City, right click, and I'll bake it into Baked City. Now at this point I can turn off Grasshopper, and I have a set of units that I can use for axon number 1, right? Axon 1 of 2. Okay. I can turn this new component off. I'll leave it in there, but I'll just turn the layer off. I'm going to just move around this and just sort of audit it. That looks pretty improbable, so I'll go ahead and, if not impossible, I'll just delete it out. Same thing there. Just get rid of those sometime today. There we are. Now I like it where they're like sort of cantilevering out and they sort of bifurcate and branch. So let's see. I'm also going to turn off that points layer, so I don't need to necessarily see those. I'll go ahead and save this again. Save early, save often. The reason why it's making me save as is because I have this saving as a Rhino 6 file. So if any of you are running Rhino 6 instead of 7, you can still. All right. If I want to get rid of that stupid looking cross wireframe on each face, I can just select all of these at once. I can go to the properties box here where it says show surface isocurve and it's checked. I can uncheck it. You can also always turn the density down if you wanted to. Just waiting for it to respond. There we are. Yeah. So what's really interesting is that it seems to be like the only thing to do, like with a bunch of these Dutch architects, universe going on, how to make a tower block that looks cellular and aggregate. UPRDB has some, Rand Koolhaas and OMA has some, VRD Eagles, of course, loves to do that. Cryptographic Environ, Swiss architects. Right? So you start to understand this as an aggregate city rather than like one iconic building in each wall, right? Kind of like junk space where it's like this one doesn't talk to this one. This one, it's all sort of vocabulary. It's really interesting. It looks bottom up. No? All right. For those who are curious, I can again just show what the next step will be on Wednesday. But what we'll do is we'll basically go to Tools, Options, and open up the settings in Rhino. And out of the box, sometimes they're pretty dumb. So we'll go to the View, Display Modes, and we'll start to play around with changing what the rendered mode looks like. So we can do a simple screen capture with a transparent background, but we can begin to sort of talk about, well, what do we want to show, what edges do we want to show, what isocurves we want to show, edges versus internal edges versus naked edges or external edges, right? We can begin to set line weights and sort of make things read and make them super legible without having to worry around with the make 2D and that kind of stuff. I like make 2D, and I like having that vector information in Illustrator so I can change the line weights there, but there's just too many edges here, right? It takes a long time. It takes a long time to generate, and then even longer to sort of really go through it and give it the TLC that it really wants. I would say this is the best way of doing it here. So at this point, I'm going to turn on show isocurve, show sub-D wires. I can also drill down into this and say, let's see, objects, and even down to surfaces, right? These are surfaces. I could say use single color for all edges, black. Use single color for all naked edges, and I can begin to give it the thickness for each of these edges, right? Use objects color, isocurve width. I've already turned the isocurves off. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Let me just see what this looks like if I turn it to rendered mode. Right. All right. So typically on render mode, it won't render the edges and stuff like that. By default, it might not even render the curves. If you have any curves, this way it's going to show you all that stuff, right? It's going to turn it all on. So let me just zoom in here and let's take a closer look. All right. Let's see if I can find something here. When it comes to the intersections between things, I don't have a line drawn there. That really bugs me because it's not an edge. Let me see if we can find a way to deal with that. Tools, options, clipping planes, other settings. Let's see here. This is in rendered mode. Objects, shade highlight, control points, visibility. Locked objects. I was looking for something that talks about intersections. Darn. That might be the one limitation here. There is a way, though, to actually have it draw lines between all the intersections of things. It just takes a little while. But since I have time, maybe I'll do that. Let me go back to objects, curves. Curve width is 1, curve width is 1, use object's color. I'm going to say use single object for all, black and white, black and then 1 for the width. So let's see here. Let's go with intersect. Intersect, select objects to intersect, and then I'll select a baked city. So I'll select all these objects and hit enter. It's going to calculate all those intersections. All those intersections between two intersecting planes create a line, right? So it might take it a while, but hey, I have time. Right now, I'm waiting. So if you're really super anal about this like I am, then that's an option. I would actually question if the scale these are going to be at if it's really that necessary, but I might as well try it just to sort of test it out. Just waiting, as is typical. The other thing is I'm noticing that these edges are beefed up, so they're sort of silhouette edges or naked edges, but the other ones are not. So I'm kind of curious if there's a separate setting I need to use for poly surfaces or B-reps versus the surfaces that I was just using. Although it looks like everything else is on. It's kind of weird that it's not giving me a consistent line weight around the whole silhouette of the object. So I'm just going to take a look at that. And again, we'll go over these step by step to follow along with. Don't worry if you're not following along. We'll do that on our last day. Yay! And I like seeing you guys, but you guys need the time. So, by the way, I got an email saying that the course evaluations are open for you guys. So don't forget to do that. I actually do read them. So, if you have any constructive feedback, or you just hate me or like me, just let me know. What I don't want is like 2 people to fill it out, because those 2 people are usually the ones that either really like me or really hate me. Either way, it's not fair. So, getting a better sample size is honestly to sort of understand what the frustrations and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot of stuff to intersect, so it's finding a lot of lines. And it's not giving me a progress bar to tell me how it's doing, so I'm just sort of at the mercy of waiting for that little blue circle to keep spinning. So how's it going over there with you guys? Still going all right? Yeah? Do you need me float around? You guys have this? You got this? You guys look really tired. I know you guys you're at the end almost, right? So keep your chins up. Right? Keep your heads up. You'll do just fine. Just keep working hard. Anybody have any questions about Boolean stuff? So I just assume be as productive as you want. If you're done, you're at this step and you've already got 2 things and you're like, I'll just wait till Wednesday to finish it, that's fine. If you're just working, that's fine too. I'll just keep talking at you. Hopefully I don't annoy you so much you start throwing things up here at me. You ever It's funny. No, I won't even say it. It's just not even worth it. But anyway, like I'm getting the blue circle, spinning circle of question marks here. So we'll see if this ever pulls out of the front here soon. I think for now I will probably turn off the recording. Yeah, you have a question? What's that? We don't have a final, this is all project based, so there's no test. I mean, I've never given a test in any of my courses or quizzes. I'm trying to figure out how I would do that. It'd be like, I don't know, I mean, that just seems like, that's pretty, that'd be a weird way of trying to assess this course. Wouldn't it be like what does this button do? Like, in plain English, try to tell me? I don't know, like, show me how you can use these tools to make something extraordinary, right? I mean, use something ordinary. I mean, that math is pretty lame, actually, right? They're trying to make something super extraordinary out of it. It's kind of interesting.